It was either decades or a few centuries ago when the USA emerged like an Everest of power, cash, and authority. From the origin of the internet to the landing of man on the moon, the promotion of its culture globally, and financial supremacy, America was, indeed, the world superpower of the free world. Yet, behind the facade of such success and power, some drawbacks to the idea of the American dream were gradually revealed. The current narrative that America is in decline has recently gone mainstream. The other people call it the cyclical downturn, which is just a low the nation was bound to experience. Some, on the other hand, regard it as a sign of unrecoverable decay. So the question arises, is this the America you and I grew up with? Is this the America that was made with our sweat and hard-earned money? It is often also said that America's decline began with what was once viewed as the country's ironclad economy. Many American workers have considered this period of the mid-20th century as the golden era of the American worker. The wages were high, the middle class was happy, and all the people had job opportunities because the manufacturing industries emerged to manufacture products the whole world required. Jump to the present day and all the fundamentals of America's economy have changed beyond all recognition. The fact that the economy transitioned from manufacturing and the production of tangible goods to the financialization of the economy and valorization of services like finance, real estate, and technology left entire communities ravaged. The Rust Belt, which was supposed to be the industrial hub of the country, became a representation of a dying small middle class. They attributed outsourcing and globalization as the reason for the loss of jobs for the American people. Other conglomerates such as General Motors and Ford moved their manufacturing plants to countries like China and Mexico that paid workers relatively cheaper, hence laying off millions of employees back in America. In reality, the situation was much worse. Indeed, the wealthy people became even wealthier and the gap between the poor and the rich widened. But even such an unbelievable currency as the US dollar is not as strong as it was, and it can be considered a world currency no more. Given the fact that the Federal Reserve is still using the tactic of quantitative easing to support the fragile economy, inflation rates have risen. Inflation is on the rise and income remains stagnant, giving us a clear indication of the losing purchasing power of the average American dollar. The national debt has been over $30 trillion, and many people have started questioning the stability of the nation's economy. War has also been one of the leading causes of America's decline as a superpower in the world. After the Second World War, the United States was actively involved in an unending series of conflicts, wars and interventions with many uncertain results. The wars in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan are good examples of the failings of an empire or, in this context, imperial overstretch. The military-industrial complex is, therefore, alive, but whether it is to the benefit of the American populace. Bridges are falling, schools starving, and health care is beyond the reach of millions, but the defense expenditure keeps on rising. The three wars of aggression, specifically the war on terror, weakened America in many ways, including financial resources and values. Also, its role on the international level has been jeopardized, as well as the image of the country in the international arena. One of the most significant resources that have been lost by America, a former advocate for democratic values and people's rights overseas, is moral power. Disturbing images such as drone attacks and killings, as well as the torturing of prisoners, have replaced the perception of the U.S. as a friendly power. There is a saying, "United we stand, divided we fall," which used to be the slogan of a nation which was the melting pot of different cultures, races and beliefs, but now looks more like a cruel joke. This time division in the United States seems to have grown to be bigger than it has ever been. This situation has arisen with the current levels of political polarization, making it difficult for both parties to gain any ground, and they are focused on a civil war. Political races, women's rights, and immigration have become hot potatoes that have polarized the society, making it difficult for people to find a middle ground. Compounding the situation, the media, mainstream and non-mainstream, has nurtured these divisions to feed people with only one side of the story at the cost of truth. This problem has been further worsened by social media, where fake news flows like the coronavirus, leaving Americans more confused and divided than before. Since the end of the Second World War, America defined the rules of the international system through organizations such as the United Nations, NATO, and the WTO. The Marshall Plan was used to rebuild Europe after World War II, while the Bretton Woods introduced the US dollar as the world currency. America's power meant that it was not only armed to the teeth, but it benefited from the rules it largely authored. Today that order is eroding. For us, it is important to understand that the existence of racial tensions in the United States dates back to the time of the formation of this country. While the initial reformist effort of the black citizens' struggle in the 1960s paved the way to the gaining of legal equality, racial justice in America still escapes the hands of man. The recent police killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many other African American men and women triggered the Black Lives Matter protests across the United States. Demonstrations took place all over the nation and millions of people mobilized for justice and change. The Black Lives Matter movement went viral, which brought awareness to police violence as well as systemic racism everywhere in the world. But these protests also worsened the division within the country as well. To one side are Black Lives Matter and other activist and/or progressive organizations demanding fundamental changes, defunding the police, jail reform, and black fiscal policy. On the other side, conservatives regard these demands as threats to law and order, patriotism, and the sanctity of American society. The upsurge of the white nationalist groups and the acts of hatred have equally contributed to the escalation of the divisions. First, it should be stressed that social justice concerns do not apply only to race. Gender, sexuality, and immigration have also included issues which defined the culture wars. The America that everyone used to look at as one big melting pot wants to blow at any given moment. Can a nation which is as divided as it is racially, culturally, and ideologically, ever recover? The public's trust in the American institutions is at an all-time low. The government, the medical, the courts and even the military can no longer be regarded as credible or unbiased. Trust in the media has been affected in a very big way. When fake news has become a staple of information sharing, and with the division between left and right-leaning sources, the American public does not know what media source to trust. To shorten institutional trust, people develop conspiracy theories and establish an information flow. Thus the question comes up, when people have no confidence in their structure, their government, how do they handle themselves? In the early years of the 21st century, technology was perceived to be the solution to America's continued dominance in the world. The growing success of the technology industry supported by the rapid development of startups in Silicon Valley means that such companies as Google, Facebook, and Amazon are viewed as world leaders. Though this has given many drifts towards the use of technologies, it has however gone side by side with many demerits. Through their algorithms, they dictate the narrative in society, a narrative that is often toxic, fake news promoting and a narrative that only serves to divide. The technological advancement in the market has shifted the labor market into unstable employment systems where contract work and the gig economy have become the widely acceptable types of jobs. Is America capable of staying competitive as the world is gradually becoming a more competitive place to be? America's educational standards were once the best in the world, and they churned out the best brains in science, technology and arts. Today, it is one of the areas where the country is lagging in terms of productivity. Present-day public schools, especially those found in black neighborhoods, are receiving minimal funding and are congested. The teachers are employed and paid little while the students are charged more. The costs of higher education have raised to the point that more people cannot afford it. At the same time, countries such as China, South Korea and even Finland are spending billions on their education systems and performing better than the USA. If this generation fails to produce a good educational system, the U.S. will be at risk of losing its growth, innovation and its competitive edge. The country's healthcare system is yet another shame of America and a further sign of the country's demise. It has been determined that, for instance, the United States is one of the wealthiest countries in terms of healthcare. Tens of millions of people in the United States do not have health insurance and cannot pay for their treatments. The current COVID-19 era has exposed all these flaws since hospitals were overwhelmed and millions of families lost their health insurance and employment. So, the healthcare crisis is not just an economic problem, it is also a moral problem. How can a country that was built on principles of freedom and prosperity offer its millions of inhabitants not proper medical treatment? This all was a gradual social strike carried out by the super-rich and enabled by the political elites, who manipulated the political system to the benefit and damage of the majority. Ever since its creation, the Republican Party together with the support of the country's most affluent class formed policies that increased economic disparity, reduced social protection measures, and put corporate gains above the common citizen's well-being. They removed most of the social regulation meant for workingmen, and each time the disparity of wealth increased, it was the working class that was threatened. If there was the last nail in the coffin, it was Donald Trump, a man who once declared he would drain the swamp and then proceeded to fill it with all the insiders he vowed to vanquish. America has also been challenged to the extreme under the Trump administration. Such actions as the tax cuts for the upper class, deregulation of important sectors of the economy, and the rhetoric that only poisoned the relations between Americans further witnessed the 1% getting richer in their golden enclosures. This is how we get to a situation where the American dream is only possible if a person belongs to the elite 1%. Trump's America was a theater for disaster. He does not only court and even coercively partner with the elite but also uses the policy-making power of the elite to get ahead at the expense of the many. Was it ever with the intention of making America great again? Was it after seeing to their welfare while the rest of the nation sank to the abyss? The split only increased with time and soon the whole country started feeling parting apart right at the fabric of the nation. And now, here we stand, on the edge of a fractured society, asking ourselves, is it even possible to recover after all the destruction has been caused by the Republicans and Trump's final deadly blow? And with time this gap widened and the very foundation of the social structure of the nation began to deteriorate. America's fall is not only an economic story, a political one, or a social one. It is the story of a people wandering in the wilderness, of a society which once boasted of its ethical standards and principles seeking an anchor. The task ahead is difficult and daunting, and yet it has never been more important to do so. Is the day coming when the American empire will be replaced by another, its leaders removed and a new system put in place? It is impossible to say, but it is a commonly held belief that this is the model followed and thus perhaps this is what is in store for America. To these questions, the answers remain vague. What is obvious, though, is that the future of America has a choice of directions it can take. This means that the decisions that are to be made in the following years will either keep the country in a state of deterioration or make it start a new life. What do you think? Is America heading towards the flight, and is there still any possibility of the country rising again? Time is counted and nobody can escape the fact that the entire world is an observer of what is happening.